Hey guys, welcome to You'll Probably Agree. Today I have Ian Simmons from Kicking the Seat on. Right now I am talking to him in a hotel room, and don't get the wrong idea. We both love Batman, but we don't love him that much. However, there was a movie Ian mentioned. I think I saw it on your first TikTok video of the Lego Batman movie and how it explored some themes about Batman's struggle with actually starting a family and moving on with his life that I found kind of interesting. And I rewatched the film, and I have my thoughts on the film, but I'd love to hear what yours are first.
Well, thank you, Mike. And yes, that was my first and so far only TikTok video. It's been a crazy couple of weeks, but I just to kind of preface things. A couple of weeks ago, my son, my youngest, who's 4, expressed an interest in watching the Lego Batman movie because he's getting to know who Batman is through like children's books, and he loves Legos. So I said, "Hey, there's a movie made of Legos about Batman." He's like, "Let's watch it." So I did. And I loved the Lego Batman movie when I saw it in theaters a few years ago, and watching it again, things have kind of changed culturally, politically, and in terms of just like my life of being, a dad 2 times over. That it really kind of struck me how deep some of the messaging goes in this film. It's a very positive movie. It's a very silly, goofy movie in the kind of the tradition of like the Lego movie kind of franchise tends to be. But when you look at what Bruce Wayne is dealing with and what the Joker's dealing with, this
Mm.
whole idea of them, kind of really needing each other, being a symbiotic relationship, it was is really profound, I think.
Yeah, I did kind of like how Joker does because I had to say I didn't think about it that much before this movie, although they do spell it out loud throughout the comics that the Joker really just exists to troll Batman. And you kind of just see like how sad and pathetic his existence is in the first place because he's like, "You don't like me? Why not?" And he starts crying about it. I'm like, "Oh yeah, that is true. Like if there was no Batman, if he just straight up killed the Joker in the beginning, wouldn't like the Joker just stop doing things?" Because that's what I always thought was silly about Batman's no kill rule, is that you know uh, I grew up on the Michael Keaton Batman, so I like knew him from those movies. So like when they introduced him as killing people, I was like, so what? Like he doesn't kill people. What's that a big deal? But you sort of see basically existentially through the Joker. If he just took care of him, I wonder if they still would have had that conflict throughout the years.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the no kill thing. I don't know. I mean, I love the Batman comics, and I'm reading them right now, like Batman Detective and some of the spin-off series. But I don't know where the Batman doesn't kill thing came into the picture. I don't know if that was something that predated the Burton movie and he just kind of like shoved it to the side, because Batman doesn't actively go out and like murder people, but he also does things like when he sends the remote Batmobile into the factory and it drops those giant wheel bombs,
Yeah.
in front of the goons, and all of a sudden they blow up. You don't really think about it in the moment, but like, yeah, he just killed those people.
Yeah. It was also the
um,
80s, and that it was like we were used to heroes just kind of wiping guys out with machine guns and all that.
right. So when you're absolutely right, when later on, when they make more of a point, like, oh, Batman doesn't kill people, like, is that really a thing? Well, I guess we can kind of go with it. But what struck me is that we've seen some of this in the movies and some of this in the comics, particularly in Alan Moore's The Killing Joke, the
Mm.
one shot from '86, I think, kind of an iconic story where Barbara Gordon gets shot and assaulted and ends up in the wheelchair and becomes Oracle later. But the whole idea of Batman and the Joker needing each other. Um, what struck me is that Batman always kind of goes along with it when the Joker says, like, we need each other. There's no me without you, and vice versa. Batman has always sort of wrestled with that. But in the Lego Batman movie, like in the opening scene with the whole big, everything's on
Mm-hmm.
fire and the Joker's like, victorious. And he's like, you need me. And Batman's like, I don't need you. Like, wait a second, what? It's the first time when Batman, to my knowledge, has kind of asserted himself and said, "No, we have nothing to do with each other. You're scum."
Yeah. Yeah, that was kind of the first time where basically, I guess Batman sort of realized his own problem is why am I always alone sometime, all the time? I need no one but me. I have no one. It's like you have Gordon, you have Alfred, you have his daughter, you have like a million people in your life, dude. But why do you push everyone away? And that's
Hmm.
something they also I was watching because I was sort of like, well, Batman trying to have a family. They did explore this before, like not very well, mind you. They explored it with Batman Forever, and they explored it with Batman and Robin, which very haphazardly. And then they explored it with this film. Oh, Mask of the Phantasm is one where they did a pretty fine job at it. I rewatched it recently. And yeah, it's funny. It's a lot of Batman things mixed together. It's an origin story partially, and it's also sort of like a retirement story at the same time because it brings to the idea what happens when Batman can't do this anymore. How can he move on? But it does sort of bring about sort of the ending where the uh, the actual Phantasm who was going around and hunting everyone who turned out to be his girlfriend, whose name I can't remember because I am infamously known for being bad at names. Uh, she leaves him or she dies, and then we kind of go full circle as to why he's sort of destined to be this way. So I remember seeing that, and I'm like, yeah, this is sort of like a funny version of Mask of the Phantasm with the love story removed. But it also does bring up some issues with kids' films that I think, like a lot of adult films, like don't examine so much. Like I was watching a Disney movie last night that was sort of had like a theme tied to identity that was tied very well. So I'm wondering,
What
like,
movie was it?
it was what was it? Seeing Red,
Oh, wait, Turning Red, the new
Turning
Pixar?
Red. Yeah, I think it's called
Okay.
Seeing Red, or is it called Turning Red? Is that why I couldn't find it
I
in my
think
inbox? Yeah,
I think it's Turning Red, yeah.
that's why. Yeah, because I was like, what the hell? They sent this to me, and I kept typing in Seeing Red, and it was turning. Yeah, see, I told you I'm
And you got so
infamous.
mad. You
Yeah.
got so mad that you couldn't find it that you actually started seeing red, and
Well,
that
you see,
confused me
I
even
was
more.
gonna make that joke online, and I'm like, that is just so tacky. Like I'm
Leave it
like,
to me. Yeah, that's fine.
no, no, I'm
I have
just.
no shame.
You gotta remember, I work at a comedy club, so I've kind of become like a comedy snob, and it just happens to everyone. It's weird. It's sort of like becoming a film snob in a way. Although we don't believe in snobbery, because if we did, we wouldn't be talking about the Lego Batman movie. Because the one thing I love about these Lego movies is I've been kind of rambling is I love their stop motion sort of animation. It's sort of similar to what Tim Burton did with Nightmare Before Christmas and all that, and it's very colorful, very beautifully shot film actually.
It's it's the same thing with the Lego movie. I don't think I realized. Well, by the time Batman Lego came out, I knew, but with the Lego movie, I didn't realize that it wasn't Legos. Like they did so well creating these CGI Lego pieces. I was like, why don't they just use real Legos? Because they do stuff in this movie that you can't do
Mm-mm.
with, with real Legos and animations unless you want to take like 1,000 people in 100 years.
Mm.
So yeah, it's down to the details of like the scratches on the pieces, and every time there's an explosion, you actually see like the individual like plastic flames and stuff. It's so good.
Yeah, it's beautifully made. I don't. How many Lego movies have they made now? I know they made like a ninja one that people didn't like. I don't know if they came out with the second one. I loved the first one. I was like shocked how good that was when it first came out.
The first Lego movie,
Yeah.
yeah, I actually didn't like the first Lego movie.
Oh,
I was in the minority on that one. I really liked this Lego movie too, and I love the Batman Lego movie. But the thing is, I need to go back and rewatch the first Lego movie because it's been, I think, long enough that I can be like, okay, what was my problem with this thing, and do I still have it?
well, I am due to rewatching the Eternals. It's just that I wasn't a very big fan of Nomadland, and I wasn't a big fan of Eternals, and I just don't like Chloe Zhao just might not just be my style, but I have to go back and see it again. If I were to go off my notes here, oh, I loved how they had the Batman theme in it. That was sort of like a derivation of the old Andy Warhol song, where it's like Batman, who's the toughest one out there, Batman. They do a good
Well,
job paying homage to the history, is what I'm trying to say with it.
they do, and that's the thing that I don't know who wrote it was not Lord Miller who directed this one, it was Chris McKay. But whoever wrote this damn thing, and I'd say all the Lego movies, they're so immersed in the pop culture and the history of the properties that they're working with, that like in jokes abound. And now, because it's the first time I've watched it, in years, and I've seen like the Suicide Squad came out last year, I noticed that when they have the big collage of DC villains, like kind of marching around at the beginning and causing chaos, you see Polka Dot Man.
Yes, you do, and that was before Suicide Squad. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So it's like they were doing the deep cuts long before James Gunn and company.
yeah. If you want to even get to a deeper cut, the guy who was Polka Dot Man was also the crazy guy in The Dark Knight. The one where Two-Face is trying to shoot him in an alley. He's saying, "Tell me what you know." He's like, "I don't know anything." So
Yeah, it was
goes full
David
circle.
Dashmalkian,
David Dashmalkian.
Chicago's very own.
Yeah, well, it's there's a lot of Chicago guys in Hollywood. A lot of times people will be like, that guy's from Chicago. I'm like, well, yeah, it's a big city.
Well, but the thing is, he actually he's not like from Chicago. He lives here.
No, I know. He's
Um,
sort of like Michael Shannon is like that too. Like if you
yeah,
live around Lakeview, or not Lakeview, I'm sorry, I should say Lincoln Park, across the street from Second City, there's the Old Town Ale House. They have like naked pictures of like, or paintings of like Sarah Palin and stuff like that. And there's like a portrait of Roger Ebert there, just to go off the film critic stuff, and like a bunch of other celebrities who visited there. Yeah, Michael Shannon is there all the time. He was there one of my friends who bartends at my job was there the night he was there during the Oscars.
yeah.
But yeah,
I
I've
love
seen
that
him.
story.
Yeah, I've seen him there. Like I've seen him in town like a million times. Like if you're just around there. Like go to
That's cool.
Kincaid's, go to Old Town Ale House. Yeah, but yeah, he's like. But to your point, they're like Chicago natives. They love this town. A lot of people from Chicago stay in Chicago. I know. I moved to L.A. I wasn't a big fan of it, and then eventually, I went back to Chicago because there's just so much culture and history there. But if you do love L.A., that's awesome because there's a lot of magic there too. Now I did not destroy that demographic. Um, but to go back, there's so much imagination sort of behind these Lego movies. There's more than I thought there would be, because the nice thing with this film is it does kind of cover Batman's pop cultural history head on. Sometimes some of the jokes leaned in a little too much, where I'm like, okay, stop trying to tell a joke, move on with the story. Some of it is perfect though. I love particularly the beginning where they're showing the logo and he's like Warner Brothers. Doug, and he's like literally just spelling out what's on the screen because we know what's there. And Will Arnett, by the way, if we go to transition over to the cast, is really great in it, except for Zach Galifianakis. He was. I feel like they could have just gotten Mark Hamill, especially since they got Billy D. Williams to play the Two-Face he never got to play.
Yeah, I don't mind Zach Galifianakis. I think he's pretty spot on for this incarnation of the Joker, because he is kind of goofy and sad, whereas you know Mark Hamill played the Joker is a goofy character, but he played the more serious kind of like scary Joker. This guy, he's not. He wants to think he's scary, but he's just not.
Yeah, this one just
Because I
kind
think
of
because he
comes off like a
spends
kid. Yeah.
yeah, and it's interesting. Like it's because I think he spends most of the movie in like this self-esteem, low self-esteem fog. It'd be interesting to see the Batman adventure involving the Joker before he lost his kind of spine and conviction. Like, could Zach Galifianakis do like a scary version of the Joker? I don't think so, but it'd be interesting to think about.
I think he could. Like, he kind of scares me with some of his stand up. Like, when he just like randomly blows up the crowd. I'm like, whoa! It's just like, but then again, anyone screaming is kind of scary. But
I didn't like, and this is an artistic decision. For some reason in this movie, the Joker has the sharp cartoon teeth, like shark's
oh
teeth.
yeah, yeah.
What?
I maybe because like ugly teeth are too scary. No, actually, that was just a weird decision. I'm guessing the director's like, what if that's funny? So I was like, yeah, let's put that in there. And that's probably how it happened.
The only times where I thought the idea of the Bat family was not cheesy, even though it's kind
Mm,
of a cheesy, lovey movie. They've got the parallel between the family portrait of Thomas and Martha Wayne and
yeah.
little Bruce, like right before they get horribly killed. And then at the end, you've got the next to that picture is Batman with his new family, like Robin and Alfred and Commissioner Gordon and Barbara and all that. Um, that's kind of touching stuff. I like Robin in this movie. Two things that I thought I would never find not annoying: Michael Cera and the OG Robin.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, we didn't. Well, they did. That I like. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
oh no, like I mentioned, I'm reading the bunch of Batman comic books right now, and there's a backup story in Detective Comics that has this kind of like a gritty feel. It's about like a little orphan kid who's got a vendetta against Bruce Wayne,
Yeah.
and Batman, I think he sends Robin after him, and it's an older version of Robin, so he's like in his mid 20s, I guess. I'm not sure if it's Tim Drake or which, because it takes place in the past, kind of. But it's like a guy in his mid 20s dressed in like the Dick Grayson Robin costume. I'm like, that does not work in a grim and gritty setting at all.
I
And
think
they kind of have fun with that in the Lego Batman movie.
exactly. They make fun of it. They're like, we know that this Robin doesn't work in these movies, and here's why. And that's probably why we'll never get a Robin. When I don't know when Robin was implemented in the comics. I don't even know if he's in them still. I still find it hilarious. I wish they did do a joke where they had that public vote when there was this big explosion and the Joker captures Robin if he lived or not.
Death in
And
the Family, yeah.
yep, and unanimously everyone said dead. And then of course there were Robin fans who were upset about that, so they brought him back. I think that's when Tim Drake came in. I'm not sure. Again, it's weird. I grew up on Batman through the movies and not through the comics, because even as a kid, like I enjoyed comics, but I was like more into reading books and stuff like that. I'm not trying to sound like a snob, although
Hmm.
guess what? I'm a critic, so I'm going to anyways. Um, uh, but because of that, my introduction to the character has always been on screen and imagined. But it's funny, even through the comics and through cinema, like audiences alike just aren't fans of Robin. I don't think we're ever going to see Robin like in a movie. And of course, this movie kind of tackles it head on. It's like, yeah, we know Robin's lame, so put all the lame, silly stuff here. Again, that's the whole idea of these Lego movies is about playing with a toy box.
Yeah, that's the thing is, I would like to see, and I know you've seen the Pattinson Batman. I'm seeing it this weekend.
Mm.
Like everybody I know, I think who lives in Chicago has seen this movie except for me. Um, I'm sorry, who is a critic. But
No, I actually have a couple comics who saw it, and I'm like, how do you get screening set? They're like, they're just offering them. I'm like, okay, WB's feeling good.
um, but one of the things I would like to see is a legitimate run at Robin. They tried that with Joel Schumacher, but everything Joel Schumacher tried out
Mm,
turned to piss. I mean, what they did with Bane is unforgivable, but Bane can still work as a character in the movies, as proved with The Dark Knight Rises, a movie I've got my issues with, but
mm,
that doesn't really circulate around, does Bane work as a character? I think he
mm,
absolutely does.
mm,
With the Schumacher Batman, you've got Chris O'Donnell, who I think did fine with what he was given, which wasn't much, but I think you could even pull off a Robin with a goofy costume if you make him like a little kid. Because
yeah.
Bruce Wayne adopted Robin as one of the Flying Graysons when he was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
But in the TV show, in the movies, even in The Dark Knight Rises, where you've got Joseph Gordon-Levitt, oh, my legal name is Robin or whatever,
Yeah.
they're all adults. I think Chris O'Donnell was supposed to be like 19 or something like that, still living at the orphanage or whatever. Or no, yeah, he was with the Flying Graysons at that point.
Yeah, that's like the
But
90s when someone who was like a teenager looked like they were 30.
Right, but I mean, if you look at the Dark Knight Returns, Frank Miller's groundbreaking comic book,
Mhm.
you've got like a 65-year-old, roided up Clint Eastwood looking fucking Batman, and then you've got I think Kelly something, a 12-year-old girl essentially as Robin
Yeah.
in that goofy costume, but it totally works because she's like a little badass, and it's such a contrast that it's almost like we know this isn't supposed to work in this universe we're going for it anyway. Whereas traditionally with Robin, it's like, yeah, this is perfectly normal, right? People just walk around dressed like this. No,
I,
no.
I think if they want to make Robin work, he'd have to be. I'm sure throughout the years of the comics, there is a derivation of him that's as dark and brooding as Batman, and that's sort of what you'd basically need to have is someone who is like Batman, maybe even tougher. Maybe yeah, there's certainly the whole thing of I grew up in the circus, you grew up a millionaire, and there could be like a
Mhm.
father son relationship, but you could have something where maybe the audience agrees with Robin because Batman is doing something that may very well be immoral. Maybe putting him in the suit when he doesn't want to be, who knows? I'd have to obviously flesh the idea out more, but I'd like to see something where we would have a Robin that isn't Robin and like the little tight speedo, very revealing outfit with like the little mask on here. Like nobody can guess who I am if I have a mask around my eyes and nose. They could do that. They sort of hinted that at the end of Dark Knight Rises, where Joseph Gordon-Levitt is given the coordinates to or I should say Tim Drake or whatever, is given the coordinates to the Batcave. He finds like all the stuff. He gets raised up on that platform where it kind of alludes to he is either going to be the next Batman or not going to be the next Batman. And I think that would be the best way to do it. Like make a movie about Batman retiring and he passes his torch on to the next generation. And
See, I
then you
don't,
could call it
I don't
Batman
want.
Forever. No.
See, I don't want to see that until we've had a proper Batman movie.
Yeah.
I think the closest we've come to a proper Batman movie is the '89 version, and even
Hmm.
that was mostly a Joker movie.
Hmm.
Uh, because, and again, this is my kind of beef going into the Pattinson movie, which I haven't seen. I know a lot of people love it, but
Mm-hmm.
my main problem with that is the same problem I have with Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
Every 6 years, they reboot Spider-Man. It seems like we're on our like third incarnation in 20 years. Uh, he just keeps coming back as well, we're going to get another teenager, we're going to see him in high school. Spider-Man in the comic books hasn't been a teenager for decades and decades.
Mm-hmm.
It's with that weird Marvel Comics time, he's like perpetually a 35-year-old
Mm-hmm.
high school teacher who's fights crime after work. And that's an interesting version of the character that we haven't really seen explored in the movies. Same thing with Batman. I think if you would put Ben Affleck's Batman
Mm-hmm.
into the Matt Reeves the Batman, because I was so excited because I like Ben Affleck as an actor. I think he can pull off the brooding thing and the kind of like the flamboyant, kind of arrogant millionaire guy.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to see that,
Mm-hmm.
but he gets buried under so much crap because he's fighting Superman, that he's buried among the Justice League, that we haven't even gotten a real Batman movie with him.
Yeah.
So until we see an actual like adult Batman who isn't like, oh, it's my second year doing this
Mm-hmm.
and I have no real gadgets, I've got armor. I want to see a Batman like we can read in the comic books right now, where he's been doing it for a while. He's got his rogues gallery, he's got the technology he needs, but he's up against some threat that is really hard to, he's got to save the city. After we have at least one of those, then I can say, yeah, we'll do the passing the torch, because there hasn't even been a torch lit yet, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Well, that is a good point, and I'm wondering the new Flashpoint movie I know is going to be focused on Michael Keaton's Batman and Ben Affleck's Batman as well as the Flash. I'm just thinking, why even have the Flash in there? Make it just a Batman movie. I don't think it's going to end well. I think it's just going to be a bunch of cheap fan service with,
Yeah.
very limited sort of. It's not going to do what Spider-Man No Way Home did, where we actually got to explore Spider-Man's sort of next step into maturity by meeting the other Spider-Man. Which, yeah, I mean, at this point, I'm not spoiling it. Marvel's like literally just releasing photos from that movie left and right. They don't even care anymore. They're like, okay, here you go. You paid the money. Here's the goods.
Yeah, I mean it's $1 billion plus movie. Everyone who cares to see it by now has seen it. But I mean that's the interesting point is that with from what everything I know about Flashpoint, it is kind of like the DC movie universe is a freaking mess.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna bring all these characters together, and then by the end of it, we're gonna kind of wipe the slate clean so we can have who we're gonna have moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're never gonna see Ben Affleck again. Michael Keaton, I think he's involved in that Batgirl series
Yeah,
for
he's
HBO.
Flashpoint and Batgirl. Is HBO? Yeah, did they own that stuff? Because I know, for instance, I was talking about this on our Earth's Mightiest Critics for KickingTheSeat.com plug.
Woo.
Uh, little private message board we have, and I was wondering why that Batman the Animated Series stopped after season 3 on HBO Max, and I'm guessing there's some other streaming service like DC Universe streaming, blah blah blah, and it has like all
Well,
that stuff, and that's
I,
part of the whole problem, which is they don't know how to home everything together. Even like as controversial as Disney Plus was and still is, like it does kind of have a concise singular image or umbrella that they put everything under, and this is where DC sort of falls apart, as we know. I think what they're doing now, like you said, they're taking an eraser and they're trying to scratch out the wrong answer to the math problem, but there's still a little bit of that 7 left where it should be a 9, and they're not going to be able to get rid of it. I mean, they'll just be like, well, we tried, and then they'll try fresh again. And they're trying to do that with this Batman. I know they have like a spin-off series on the Penguin and all that, and they better be really smart if they're going to do that.
I wish that I had seen the Batman along with everyone else because I just have so many thoughts, but I have no idea if they're going to be accurate. I just like look at the trailer and I've got all these like opinions and suppositions about what they're doing. Because I look at Colin Farrell from the trailers and all that stuff. I'm like, where is the Penguin? I look at Paul Dano. I'm like, that's not the Riddler. That's the Zodiac killer in a garbage bag with glasses shoved on his face. Like, what are they doing?
Mm-hmm.
But again, I'm withholding judgment mostly. But yeah, I think getting back to the Lego Batman, they kind of did the like Flashpoint, 5 years ago. They're just bringing in all the different, like the whole rogues gallery and even different versions. Like they acknowledge that, oh yeah, the 60s Batman, like he used to dress up kind of funny. And like Alfred, when he becomes part of the Bat team at the end, he's wearing sort of a retro Batman outfit. They go into the Phantom Zone where you have, that's like the IP, the graveyard where you've got like the Harry Potter villains and King Kong and all that stuff. I thought that was great because you take an idea of the Phantom Zone, like what is it? It's just this spinning weird little plate thing from Superman 2, but it's actually a dimension with all these other villains in it. And you've got like the little hall monitor, stoplight thing, keeping track of everybody. It's just one of those things like you could have done a straight Mad Magazine style parody of Batman using Legos, but you didn't. Whoever the creative team was just ran wild with their imagination and said, okay, what if at the end of this Batman movie, we've got the Eye of Sauron trying to blow up Batman. I could see some exec going, what the hell are you talking about? Don't worry. It's going to work. It's totally going to work.
Well, the way they make it work is the beauty that you have with parody, which is you're self-aware of what you're doing. And although you're throwing like every Warner Brothers license known to man at the screen, although Sauron isn't Warner Brothers, right? He's New Line Cinema, but anyways,
which is Warner Brothers.
Okay, so yeah, it's every Warner Brothers property. I just don't want to. They do that where it's tied to the character, it's tied to the theme of the story, and it's tied to basically how it knows it's making fun of itself. Where look at the opposite end of the spectrum. You get the Space Jam: A New Legacy,
which
where
I have not watched and probably full disclosure will never watch.
I will eventually watch it. I know that I'll be with a bunch of. I live in a wild world of entertainment where one day, like at a night party, we'll be like, let's put on Space Jam, and then that's how it'll happen, and I won't remember a thing. But with
I was
Space,
gonna say that sounds like a way to clear out a party. Like I want these people out of my house. Hey, everybody, let's watch Space Jam 2.
well, don't give away my strategy. But
Fair enough.
yeah, but like, with Space Jam, they take all these properties, they throw it at the screen, but it has really nothing to do with LeBron James saving his kid and all that. Like, sure it does, but I don't know why the rapists from A Clockwork Orange are cheering in the background and things of that nature. And here's an idea where it's like, well, we have the Eye of Sauron because Batman has combated everything known to man. What's a challenge he'll never face? Well, what if he takes on Sauron and all these insane villains, but he finds a way to bring everyone together, and it's by learning that he and the Joker hate each other. And it's very creative that way. It's just kind of like the first Lego movie where it's like, oh, we learned that actually it's just a little kid playing with his Legos and it's his imagination, and it's all about everything is awesome and being fun and imaginative, but also meaningful to children.
Well, and that's the other thing that I was really glad that my youngest was there to watch this with me. And I don't think he probably didn't pick up on the big meaning of it, except, oh, it's a cool way to save Gotham City. But when this thing came out in 2017,
Mm.
America was full of harmony and peace and love. No, but it's a message that I mean I picked up on it because I'm kind of a political and cultural junkie. But even today, probably especially today, watching it, there's so much division and so much strife. It's just nice to see a movie where it's like, look, our beloved city sits on top of a bottomless chasm, and it's a very tentative support system. So if it starts to crack in half, i.e., divide in two straight down the middle, the metaphors write themselves, folks. Unless we come together and link across the chasm or across the aisle and save what's really important to us, I love it because at the end, it's like, yeah, we're still going to go back to being, heroes and villains, but we're not going to destroy each other.
You need the good with the bad to measure out society. There's this very fascinating episode of The Twilight Zone I saw way back where this guy dies essentially, and he's a gambler, a hustler, what have you. So he wins every single gamble he ever gets. And at the end of the episode, he says he gets miserable. He's sick of winning. So then when you get to the episode, he says, I don't get it. I'm winning all the time. I thought this was heaven. The guy goes, heaven? And then he just starts laughing at him. And the whole idea behind that is like, you can't have everything to be perfect and great all the time. Batman exists as a symbol to defend the people, which I mean they do say very blatantly, like through the dialogue in the Nolan films, and this one they do it as well. But of course, it's parody. You can do that, and that's sort of the brilliance with sort of children's films, the comedies, is that you can explore some themes that otherwise might come across as laughable in a live action film, and that's the problem with a lot of these comic book things is that what you could do with live action compared to a comic book, if you just had the Riddler with like the silly hat, the question marks all over him, and tights with the Batman and tights and the underwear in a film, you'd go, what the hell is that?
You might. I mean, that's the thing is like, you look at a movie like Shazam,
Yeah.
which people loved. I mean, that was kind of my one sign that there was hope in this Snyderverse kind of era of the DC movies, which were all kind of soaked in bleach and grim and overlong and violent. To see a kind of a hopeful comic book superhero comic book version of Big with
Mm.
characters running around these kind of ridiculous costumes. I mean, it doesn't take that much, I don't think, for an audience to jump on board, as long as they understand at the outset, okay, this is that kind of movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can look at, you know, you mentioned Batman Forever, a movie that did very well. Not so much Batman and Robin, because at that point Schumacher had just gone completely off the rails. But in that movie, you do have Jim Carrey dressed in the kind of very flamboyant, Riddler costumes and everything. But you also establish that he is insane. He's like this crazy guy who wants to be like this big guy, so he makes his own costumes and stuff. You say, well, that's not realistic. I'm like, go look at RuPaul's Drag Race. I mean,
Oh
there are
yeah.
people dressing up in these crazy, elaborate, get-ups that they fashion for themselves to, big themselves up and be famous. And that was Jim Carrey in that movie.
Well, that was sort of the nice thing that Joel Schumacher brought in is he understood the absurdity. He understood it was a comic, but he didn't tackle it like it was the real world. And if you wanted to tackle it like it was the real world, but you're absolutely faithful to the comics to the core, then you would have to basically let the audience know that this is silly, but you have to take them seriously. Which that would be a very difficult balance as a filmmaker to find. I don't know if you could make that in a Batman movie. Because if I'm watching a Batman movie and I'm going, "Oh, okay," the movie's let me know that this guy is a nut that he's dressed up like that. Great, and they do examine that. I won't say too much about the new one, but they really examine sort of Batman's sort of core of dressing up like that and how insane it is. He's treated like a crazy person, but I'll say that's all I'll say about it. But
Yeah, I mean, we have examples of it working, but I mean, to your point, I don't know if that would necessarily work today. I mean, you look at Richard Donner's Superman movie
yeah,
or Superman 2, where you've got, I think the key is that you make it so that the characters are sort of uncriticizable. Like if you look at General Zod and his two companions, they look kind of ridiculous in these shiny, like V-neck, black, onesie kind of things. But they're able to demolish things and kill people, and they're just so vicious. You're like, I'm not going to make fun of that guy. He'll snap my neck.
right.
And they even have Superman kind of running scared. Uh, so yeah, I think that's the key. It is possible to make the kind of Batman movie we're talking about. It just takes someone with vision and who is not going to be slave to like studio notes.
Well, the nice thing about these Warner Brothers films is it feels like they've always sort of let the filmmakers make the movie that they want to. And of
For better and
course,
worse, yeah.
yeah, exactly, for better and worse, because for the better is, yeah, Marvel will always sort of be on the upswing in making the movies that are consistently good. Um, but at the same time, you'll have something like The Dark Knight come out, which you, has an Oscar, a posthumous Oscar for an actor, something that stands above its genre, right? And that's something that they've done since '89 Batman to the Nolan Batman to this one. And this movie kind of says, "Hey, we know it's dark and brooding. You don't have to worry about that here." And that's what I thing I love about animation is that they can do the things you can't do in movies. Because yeah, we could absolutely make the Batman movie that you're talking about. It's just that how many people would actually be on board with it, we're not sure. Because if people see that first image of Batman and he's in the tights and everything, you'll get some controversy on the internet. But if it could work, that'd be amazing.
I for me, I don't know, and you know the answer because you've seen it, but I'll go back to again, I don't know how people are so excited and on board for this new Batman
Mm.
because I look at it, it looks incredibly violent, it looks incredibly like orange, and people are saying, "Oh, it's a David Fincher Batman. He does so much detective work in this." Like that does not sound like a selling point to, you know, hey, there's a new Batman movie coming out. Oh, I love the Michael Keaton ones.
Hmm. Yeah,
No, that's not. You're not going to take your 12-year-old necessarily to see this version of Batman.
one thing I'm very disappointed in, not particularly with this movie, I did like it quite a bit, and it's probably gonna be for all the reasons you're not, which is fine because if everyone liked the same thing, we wouldn't need to exist. We wouldn't like you wouldn't need a critic saying I like it because of this reason. Why do you like this? Because that's the whole idea, is that you're not criticizing, you're talking about it. You're respecting it. You're letting a movie live a larger life than maybe someone who would dismiss it would. Um, but the point I was getting to is that I remember that when I was talking to you way back about this Batman movie idea that I had, where Michael Keaton is older and he's actually going to retire, because yeah, we haven't had a Batman that we focused on for a long, for a long period of time, but we do have a Batman from that era. And if we're doing this whole multiverse thing, just wipe out the multiverse and just make movies. Make a movie about a Michael Keaton facing his final years as Batman, right? And how he has to deal with that. And I mean, does he have to pass the torch or whatever? Who knows? But I would at least like to see something with an established superhero like Superman, like Batman, who isn't in their early years. At least Batman, Lego Batman had that, and the Zack Snyder Batman had that. And I think that Ben Affleck might be one of my favorite Batmen. But he's, again, they're underutilizing what they have and underutilizing what they can do. And of course, this movie works because it doesn't have to worry about any of that. They can just have fun with it. And that's the great thing about kids' movies. But yeah, I mean, in terms of Batman, I think we might go through a continuous cycle. We might go through a cycle where people go, I want something campy again. And they'll get that and they'll go, I hate it. And then they'll go back to dark again. And that's how that's how the circle or the cycle, whatever, that's how it all works. It just goes through a repetitive motion.
The one plus side is I don't know if we're ever going to see a campy Batman again, because the Schumacher versions are almost 30 years old at this point, almost. And they were not very well regarded. And as George Clooney said, he buried that franchise. Or his part in the movie. So, but I think we might kind of vacillate between the gritty realism and the more kind of like elevated reality comic book fantasy. The difference between, again, what I imagine Matt Reeves' Batman to be, and say something like Christopher Nolan's movies. I don't know if we're going to get back to Tim Burton because that's more on the goofy side, but yeah, I'm all for it. This thing is, I love Batman as a character. I love the stories. And I'm open to being, to having all of my suspicions and prejudices proven wrong by this new movie. Usually when I come out this hard about a film not being something I think I'm going to like, it ends up being one of my favorite things ever.
That's the beauty of, that's why you're a film critic, because you have a different take, but then you can explain that to people. Instead of saying, I like it. Why? I don't know.
And admit when I'm wrong. I mean, that's
yeah.
People don't like to do that, but that's one of my favorite things to do is to admit that I'm wrong in front of a lot of people and with other people who enjoy it or are able to say like, hey, welcome to the fold. You finally see what we appreciate about it, or vice versa.
Being a critic has actually learned how to humble me a little bit. So, because I used to go out and be like, this guy's a hack. And now I'm just like, all right, I got to take it back a step, But with this movie, at least it knows. I'm trying to circle it back to Batman desperately. But no, my mind goes in a million places. But I know we have like a bunch of like episodes on shows where we go down the rabbit hole, because we literally have like this campy, like funny parody that explores all the themes that we know that explores, but it doesn't really go further, I'd say, beyond that. It's a fun and wasted 2 hours, but I mean, is it something that really stuck in my head? No. I think with Batman, you do need something that is about someone older. Not just Batman, but any superhero. At least with the Avengers, we literally had like 10 years with them, and I think they spent 10 years, but I don't think a superhero has a 10-year span. They have like a 30-year span, maybe, minimum.
Well, that's the thing, is that, the Avengers proved that you can do it.
Yeah.
You had Robert Downey Jr., they kept begging him to come back for like one more cameo, because this 50-year-old former, drug abusing, like in jail actor became a beloved superhero icon that launched a multi-billion-dollar franchise. It just goes to show, like, it just seems so focus groupy. Like, oh, the 20 somethings that we want to get to the theater, they're going to want to see someone who looks like them, who's on TikTok. You're like, no, you can get Robert Downey Jr., who was 40 before they were born or whatever, and they'll love him. They'll flock to him.
Yeah, and I think that we could do that with Michael Keaton. Am I making a promotion for him? Yes. Please do, Warner Brothers. But can you erase the slate and erase it again, or just say, "Hey, look, we know we fucked up." They should be like a critic and just say, "Look, we know we didn't do right." But then again, you're sort of disparaging everyone who worked on a film in a way.
Well, I mean, with Keaton and that whole thing, I don't know what their plan is because neither of us have seen Flashpoint. I don't even know what the hell it's done. And the Batgirl series is probably spinning off from that. Because it's spinning off from that, I imagine what's going to happen is all this multiverse, Elseworld stuff is going to come together. There's going to be the big Flashpoint, and then everything is going to kind of spin off back into its own pocket universe. It's kind of like what happens at the end of No Way Home when the Spider-Men go back to their respective universes, except from the DC franchise point of view, we're going to go visit those realities.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to see Michael Keaton training up a Batgirl in his version of Gotham City that we left behind in 1992. I don't know if this Pattinson thing is going to become a franchise. I imagine it would be, even though right now it's just a one-off, kind of like the Joker. But they announced, hey, they're doing a Joker 2. So this thing's going to have a 3-picture deal, I imagine. So
did they literally officially announce Joker 2? Like, because I think that's just a rumor. I don't think they're actually gonna do it.
It was sometime last year they mentioned it. So,
Yeah,
but then again,
I
don't know.
Tabloids, If I were to guess, it's in discussion. They're begging Joaquin Phoenix, and he probably just doesn't want to do it, but Todd Haynes does. Because I think the whole reason Phoenix jumped on was because it was just like a one-movie deal.
Well, yeah, but then it made $1 billion and they backed the money truck up, and he's like, I can not eat for another month and do some crazy laughter and get this over with.
And publicity is publicity.
It's true.
Yeah, that's what it is. Like, if you're an actor, you need the attention. But at least this, Lego Batman was fine. I mean, I think you can enjoy it, but I couldn't really remember it past, after seeing it. Really, it didn't leave much of an impact on me. I think it was because it's sort of like a singular one-off in its own way, and that's sort of what the Lego movies have been doing. So for like a Lego movie, it's fine. One thing I'm really curious to do beyond the Lego movie, because the Lego movie's fun and it's great, and if I were to rate it now, I would give it 3.5 out of 4 Guinnesses, because it really is a heck of a lot of fun. It really is. But like, in terms of like subtext, there's not a lot to say about it.
Well, there's not. I mean, you're not going to get, unless you use it as a starting off point for an exploration of all the movies and comics, you're not going to get this, grand thesis exploration out of it. But there is something to think about, like what we started this conversation about, talking, Joker and Batman needing each other, and what that means for each of them. It's a different context to approach all Batman. Like, I haven't thought about the Joker in the same way since I saw, that, and I'm like, I wonder, do they really need each other? And, what if one of them just said no? But, for a kid, it's fine. You don't need to go deeper than that. Yeah. I love the Lego Batman movie, even though I too have a hard time remembering a lot of things, because it's one of those, there's 100 jokes in every minute of this hour and 44-minute movie. So it's kind of like, what's your favorite gag? I'm like, number 6022.
It's funny though. I think it's that was one flaw of the movie, was the pace of the gags. Like, if you look at one of my favorite comedies is Naked Gun, and the reason that works out is because the pacing of every joke, you kind of know, okay, here's a joke with a few beats, here's like a verbal joke, now here's a vaudeville comedic act, and you're sort of anticipating the laugh, sort of like when you're sitting in a comedy show and you're waiting for the setup and the punchline, right? Here, it seemed like there was a lot of punchline, 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 and those didn't work so well, but the setups worked well. The little subtle parts worked well. For instance, when Batman like puts his little food in the microwave, and through the microwave, you just see the silhouette of his ears in the background. He's just going like that's great. You know, those sort of things, but the overly
I
wink,
also
wink,
love
nudge,
the
nudge moments, like sometimes are too much. Anyways, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, no, I interrupted you, but I love I love when he's sitting at his home theater watching Jerry Maguire and he says, you complete me, and he just Batman just bursts out laughing.
And they re-loop that laugh like 3 times in the movie, so it's like ha ha ha, and they just best laugh ever. Will Arnett, I think I did say this before. I love Will Arnett. He naturally has that baritone voice where he was destined to be a voice actor or something like that, and somehow he became an actor. He worked perfectly in it. I thought Rosario Dawson as Barbara Gordon was great. I'm glad. I mean, obviously they didn't put her in a wheelchair after the whole Killing Joke ordeal. Um, and Jesus, who else was it? Oh, wasn't Ralph Fiennes Alfred?
Well, yes.
Yeah, and
And did he also do the voice of Voldemort?
Voldemort. Is he the bad guy? I never watched Harry
He,
Potter, but
yeah, he was the snake-faced guy.
yeah, he's
I forgot
Voldemort.
to look that
Yeah,
right. Yeah, I know he is in the movies. I couldn't remember if they actually did him
yeah.
in the Lego Batman movie.
I'm
It
not
makes sense
sure.
that they would.
Oh, you know what? I don't have it on here. But yeah, I. It's funny. They always cast Alfred in with the best actors ever. You know, you get Michael Caine, you get Ralph Fiennes, like sort of like the best
Jeremy
actors.
Irons in the
Jeremy Irons.
Snyderverse, yeah.
I have to say, Andy Serkis as an actor, not a motion capture guy, but like an actor, he is phenomenal and so overlooked. It's sad.
Well, that's why we have movies like The Batman to give him more exposure.
I
Um,
mean, kind
oh well,
of.
um, yeah, again, I this is one of my favorite interpretations of Batman. I think because it is funny, but it's also serious in parts, but never too serious where it changes what the movie actually is. Um, yeah, I dig it.
Yeah. Well, I think with that said, I think we've had everything to say about it. Are you excited to see the Batman?
No, I mean, that's the thing. I've got my ticket. I'm going to see it. I've got my reserved seat. It's going to be a packed house because I got one of the last seats at that showing. So I feel like, again, by the skin of my teeth. But I'm open to being proven wrong. But am I excited about it? No, I don't feel the same way that I do before I saw Spider-Man: No Way Home.
Yeah.
Well, even then, that movie. I was the closer I got to actually seeing it, I kind of got anticipation. But that was another one where I was dreading watching it because I thought they gave everything away in the trailer. But the trailer was miraculously just the tip of the iceberg as far as like, oh, there's a rumor that these characters might show up in Spider-Man. I had no idea they were going to become like the central part of a really moving, smart story.
There was a movie I put in my head where I'm like, they're too dumb to write this, and then they wrote it. Yeah, but Lego Batman, it was fun. Nothing to say. I think we're literally just like out of ideas or things to talk about with it. Having said that, you know what? I'm gonna drop it down to a 3 out of a 3.5. It's imaginative, but it's not like, oh wow, this is amazing. It's just fun. What would you rate it out of 4 Guinnesses?
I'd give it 4.
Wow. Yeah.
I think for what it is the perfect version of this movie. Now, again, that doesn't mean that it's all perfect. I agree that not all the gags land, but I think there is a pretty decent hit rate. And even if you're like, oh, that joke didn't work, there's still plenty to look at, like in like all of the different corners and like almost every pixel of the screen, there's something to marvel at. As far as either a joke or just a really realistically and well rendered Lego piece, you're like, oh wow, that I seriously feel like someone built this whole thing out of actual Lego.
Oh, in terms of visuals, it's fantastic. Those movies are so imaginative because there's a mixture of CG with stop motion. I'm believing.
Hmm.
And I think Phil Lord and Christopher Miller made that, and it's just so sad that they didn't get to make Solo or finish it because the studio was worried that he was too silly. And I actually kind of like Solo. I think it's one of those movies people are appreciating more with time, despite all the studio mandates and stuff like that. But it's definitely kind of a Frankenstein of a of a film where you're like, okay, here's Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, here's a little Ron Howard, but it works
I
overall.
I am a huge fan, and I've only seen it once
Yeah.
in the theater. I'm a huge fan of Solo. And it was one of those things where at the end of it, I was like, okay, they got this first movie out of their system. I want to see where they go next.
Mm.
And unfortunately, this is one of the downsides of the internet. I feel like people couldn't shut the hell up about, all the problems with it, that it kind
Yeah.
of scared people away. They're like, I don't really want to see this.
It's funny you mentioned that because the character played by Emilia Clarke in it, if I were to pull it up, her character is rumored to be in other things. They're rumored to be in Book of Boba Fett, blah 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 blah. But she is in cahoots, or I should say, she's working with Darth Maul. Quera is her character's name. And with Quera's association with Maul, you could really go places. You could open things up. I think the way they're trying to now, they tried and failed the Book of Boba Fett, but her character might come back. And I think Disney's kind of doing this thing where they know they're writing something that sucks sometimes, especially with the sequel trilogy. But then they're like, "Hey, John. Hey, Dave. Come in and fix this for us, could you?" And then they sort of wipe the slate clean. But there was potential with Solo to see, like, how does he become maybe a little more begrudging and stuff like that? Because he's always supposed to have a heart of gold. But what if they made like a movie where he isn't so nice, and we kind of see the guy who shot Greedo first in a way?
Yeah, I think this solo movie was kind of the setup for that kind of arc, and we're just never going to see it finished. I like Alden Ehrenreich as Han Solo.
Yeah.
It All I had to do really was just say, okay, he's not doing Harrison Ford, he's Han Solo.
Mm-hmm.
60 or 40 years earlier than we had seen him before, whatever the age was.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's fine. I did not look and sound the same at 23 or whatever that I do now. So
Well, and
I was very forgiving.
I'm confused about the timeline as to like, is this 20 years before like A New Hope or something like that, or like I didn't get it, or 10 years, 15, and how would he age like that? But either way, he did a good job for a thankless role. You basically had to recreate the performance of an actor who sounds bored in the first place. And that's extremely hard to do. And for that, he did a decent job. Um, so, Ian, you're 4 on the Lego Batman movie. I'm 3. Overall, it's good to see. If you have HBO Max, you can check it out now, along with, I think, Batman 1989 through Batman and Robin is available on Hulu. What I was checking, but if you want to check out everything else Batman, go to HBO. Give me money, Warner Brothers. Anyways, Ian, thank you so much. We could check you out at Kicking the Seat, or I should say kickseat.com.
That's right.
Yeah, we will be actually talking about your very high optimistic thoughts of the Batman.
Yeah, it's Wednesday, March 9th at 8:30 p.m. Central. Earth's Mightiest Critics will be reconvening. We've had a bit of a hiatus since the last Disney Marvel show went off the air, but it'll be kind of a warm up because we're going to be talking about Moon Knight at the end of the month when that show starts. So I'm very excited to talk about it. Love it, hate it, whatever. It's going to be a really great conversation with people who are, smart and passionate about this stuff.
Yes, absolutely. Well, guys, you want to check my stuff out? Just go to ypareviews.com. The YPA stands for You'll Probably Agree. And hey, if you don't want to do .com, you want to pop right up on the YouTube, just type in YPA Reviews and it'll be right there. All right. Thanks a lot, guys, and we will see you later.